one person on the wish list. So it's not bad.
Okay. We already made half of it, so should be doable.
What's the threshold you typically need to get over in order to find a publisher? Like, how many wish lists is like a good number of wish lists, and how many wish lists is like way too little, don't even consider?
Well, 10K is usually a good threshold to consider the game it's something. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I guess going into 2024, what are you guys looking out for? Like, what are the topics that you guys are sending around the office whenever you see an article out in the news? We can start on the game development side and maybe on the technology side. What are you watching, Paul, to see if it affects the way that you work?
Well, the main point is how the market is taking the consoles in it. At the moment, Steam only represents 15 to 40% of sales. So I'm taking a deep look into how Nintendo is considering the Switch 2, and how Sony and Microsoft are changing their offers. So this is because at the moment I'm working on porting my games to consoles, so that's my first subject, and this topic is quite important considering that I have to partner with publishers. So as it's one of the main missions that publishers do, and having a publisher that specify in talking with console manufacturers is quite easier and cheaper for us. So yeah, that's my main subject at the moment. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Are you considering? How are you thinking about cross-platform, Heiko?
Well, the first is obviously the technical part and mapping controls, etc. But having a release on all platforms at the same time is always mandatory, because you have a bigger impact, and indies have to get the most impact when they market their game, because we don't have so much power to communicate about it. So release the game on all platforms is the main subject.
And how is it? What at VRH Games? What do you guys do? How do you think about it?
Well, you have to take into account that for us it was minimizing barrier to entry, because we're looking at a target audience that is 40 plus in terms of the leadership segment that we're looking at, and that can sort of afford the price span that we're looking for. So because we're doing B2B licensing deals with enterprises, right? So we have to build for players who've not really been exposed to gaming, and we started the game development in 2019, and to reduce stuff like motion sickness and headaches and stuff, we went for tethered headsets like the HTC Vive Pro. And that was obviously high end. You need a high end PC. So that was a very narrow niche that we were going for. That's why for us 2024, really, if I had to boil it down to 3 topics, it would be Apple, Apple, and Apple, to really evaluate if, probably not that pro headset, but whatever they follow up with, a more affordable headset, but also what comes with whatever kind of app store ecosystem they put into place that will be compatible with that. So right now we're looking into, getting the simulator up and running for the Vision Pro development, and making sure that we can port this on the double when it's here. So that'll be our focus going forward from a technical side, and then from a publishing side as well.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. I guess just because the company that I work at, Powder, is a little bit more on the game publishing side, on the thinking about how games go to market side. The topics that come to mind for me, at least, are AI was very 2023, but I think it'll go, it'll be an even more integral part of a lot of different workflows into 2024, from game development and kind of ideation phase all the way through how content gets distributed and consumed on different platforms. But I also am thinking a lot about market consolidation, a lot about how all the different publishers, all the different studios are all buying each other. And what does that mean if you are a small independent game developer, but also what happens if you are selling into publishers, or you are doing campaigns with publishers, and how does that affect?
There she goes.
There she goes. She was just prepping for us to do it again by ourselves, right? No, but I think that, like, Elyssa, you were gone for a second. This is also, it's a huge topic. It's a huge topic for us, obviously, as well, that since we have on the one side AI coaching baked into the games, and generative AI for game development and add-ons, so that the AI actually watches the players play and then extracts strengths and weaknesses and build upon that, builds future missions and modules for the games. With Apple's take on data privacy, we need to be very careful that how do you do that? How do you use federated learning, things like this, so you can still be and play on their playground, but still get out what you need to actually build at scale. It's going to be a walk on a tightrope for a lot of developers, I think.
Totally. And then on the publishing side, Georg, what are you seeing in the change in market dynamics? Of course, more and more dollars have been going toward influencer marketing, but even that segment is changing like really, really quickly. What do you have your eyes on, and how are you kind of handling some of those changes?
The market is more or less split in a couple of groups, right? So you can either decide you want to work with the big channels and want to have a huge impact with your campaign, but then this segment became really expensive in the last years. But the smaller ones, and we are looking more and more into the micro influencer space, because there you have the target groups you want to address, especially when you have a niche game. And in this market, you still can work on a performance basis, so CPM or CPC, and sometimes even CPI basis. And of course, this is very, very interesting. And what I also see from the technical side is that although NFTs and Web3 was more or less dead in 2023 and even in 22, it's coming back. So there are a couple of promising NFT drops happening in the gaming space. That's interesting. What I also found interesting is what's happening on the metaverse type of thing. So more and more companies develop smaller games and teaser games on Roblox, of course Fortnite. So it definitely makes sense to think early on what kind of special hook can you come up with to get your audience into your game. And that could be NFTs, that could be a nice VR extension or VR game, of course, but also a smaller game on one of these huge metaverse platforms.
Totally. And I'm interested in what you're saying about how everyone needs to start, to think about the special hook. I know we were talking before about the life cycle of how long it takes to go to market these days. What are the approaches that you guys are using on the game development side to reach customers, not only for like the initial customer acquisition, but also for long-term engagement? Like, what elements are you building into the games? Very different segments, but in order to make sure that people are just so excited to be there again and again.
Well, on our side, we have it sort of baked into the business model, right? I mean, we on one side we have hot authors, so if you have I don't know, Simon Sinek or an Adam Grant, these are known quantities, and since they're rolling out a book anyways, they'll roll the game out with the book, so it's a tie-in. Don't just read the book, play the game to the book. That's one side. But since we do a cinematic setting for the game, we can usually tie it into something like. Now the book that we're doing with Ori Braffman will be about the Berlin airlift and flying the candy bombers in the Berlin airlift. And we have the 75th anniversary of the candy bombers coming up of the Berlin airlift, right? So we'll be there for the actual celebration where Berlin honors the remaining survivors, the pilots and stuff like that. And we'll have them as they're co-developers of the game. They actually added the authenticity to the game. So we're tied in via the content very much and the game settings into what the marketing and then publishing side is going to be.
And
on my part, I would say that having close relationship with gamers is still is essential, because when you make an indie game, the intimacy you have with the audience is quite important, because it's innovative and unique, and you have to create the relationship with gamers, because they kind of like your personal universe and they want to explore all of it probably on the next game. So having the usual Discord and talk with the players is still mandatory and the best way to fidelize them.
It's so amazing, Paul. I mean, this is not an indie game, right? But my 10-year-old is totally into Five Nights at Freddy right now.
Yep.
And he posted something and sent something to Scott Cawthon about. He's deep into the lore, right? He's off on the deep end. I have no idea what he's talking about, but he got a reply, and it made his day, year, month, decade, because he feels involved. He's so passionate about this now, as if it's his game now. So that it's a huge thing. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely. On a personal story, I played a French game called Dofus from the studio Ankama, like 15 years ago, and I ended up working at the studio like so many years later, and it was just a personal goal to meet the team, and it creates so much emotions and personal souvenirs
in both ways, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I did that in my solo speech. I was talking about how influenced I was. Georg, you might still remember the Sierra Online, the King's Quest games, maybe something like that, right?
Nice.
And I mean, Roberta Williams, I sent her a message on LinkedIn, and I was like, you have no idea what impact you had on my childhood. But there must have been like millions of people out there who would say that, and she wrote back, and she was such a nice lady, saying, it's always great to hear from people who play the games and what impact my games had on their lives, and because it's so abstract, as a developer, you don't know what lives you touch and in which ways, and to hear that back for us also to hear, like with our games, what impact that made in the business for them when they played it, and the lessons they took away, and they said, we actually solved something that has been fucking bugging us for month, and now we finally got ahead of that. It is fantastic, this dialogue, right?
Yeah, developing a game is like being in submarine for many years, and coming out to show the game and having some feedbacks is such a release, because you don't.
It also smells like on that submarine after your crunch time.
Hopefully not. Yeah, last month I showed a game at an event, and I had a father who had two kids who wanted to play the game, and he just couldn't get them out of the screen because they so much like to play it, and it's a good feeling.
Yeah, it should be home for us for a dinner time between mom and dad, when dad wants to play with the kids and mom says screen time's over. It's always fun. Georg, I'm curious. I'm sorry. I have a question. Like, what would you say are the worst mistakes Paul and I could make when releasing our games in terms of?
The worst mistakes you can do is when you find a little community which is engaged to your game, or if you found an influencer who was picking up your game for free and played it, then the biggest mistake is not following up on that. Yeah, we just recently had a discussion, or I had a discussion recently with someone who they created a very nice, promising game, and a couple of the biggest German influencers picked up the game for free. And he said, "Oh, that's fine, thank you very much," and never followed up, right? And then, for example, of course, something you are doing, Elyssa, is come into play. So when you have a video which were attractive to many players out there, then of course you should make some 10-second, 20-second videos out of it, and bring it on TikTok and try to ride that wave, right? So I mean, it's always of course the best marketing when you get something for free, and out of that core you can try to build up your community, right? And then
serve the organic wave.
Serve the organic wave when you have them, and when you know the target group behind this channel, then of course you can attract more and more channels, and try to enter also the paid market as well, to make your marketing scalable after some time. But in the beginning, this is the worst mistake you can do. If you have if you received some great feedback, either from a group of gamers, from a little community, or from an influencer, then pick it up, really deeply thinking about what you can make with that video or content piece, and try to be creative and ride that wave.
That's cool advice. I think for us, it's probably the issue with that is probably tunnel vision. That you're so focused in either development or executing your strategy that you kind of take the byproducts as a thumbs up, but you don't stop to say, "Oh, that is great. Should we pounce on that?" But to actually take the moment to deviate a little bit. It's good reminder. Thank you.
I also feel like in my experience also, what we do at Powder is we make it easy for streamers like the ones that Georg works with every day to create short video content with AI so that they can share it on other social media outside of Twitch, YouTube, and so on, so that they can amplify their reach. And whenever we are seeing people in, especially like Gen Z, Gen Alpha, even millennials, like, are natively creating content. We've been creating content our entire lives. It's just part of how we engage with each other and the world. And games, of course, like, create an incredible forum. Metaverse aside, they are visually rich universes where you can natively capture video or photos in order to post elsewhere. And I feel like there are some games where it's not so obvious what, like, the moments are that might be captured and shared on social media, but your community, your audience will be searching for those. And it's it's worth it in advance when you're making the game to think about how this will share and which moments you can be kind of building into the flow of the game that are shareable. And some of that is just like graphic identity, but some of that is also specific Easter eggs or exciting things that can soar without you on social media, so that those little communities get really excited to talk about it, so that then you can follow up with them and develop the community into something larger and galvanize like a grassroots movement around your game. But I think that in addition to what Georg is saying about like not following up when there's content circulating about you or information circulating about you by people who love your game, you also need to bake it into the game development process on the front end and think about how might people share this if they wanted to. Is it easy to do so?
This was my big takeaway from the times at Crytek, right? It became meme-worthy, like, can it run Crysis, right? Because they doubled down on the graphics and melted the NVIDIA cards and stuff like that. So if you have one thing in the game, or whatever your area of expertise is, graphical fidelity or whatever, right? And for us, it's usually content within the game. So it comes with the territory that we said we have to put things in that have a high potential for virality. So we asked the submarine captain, for example, like, what would you do when the sub sinks? Like, what you have a couple of minutes before that thing gets like the Titan, unfortunately. And he says, oh, everybody had their own little ritual. Like my XO, he had a Coke with him. He called it the death Coke. So the last thing he would want to do is have one more Coke. So go back to his bunk, get the Coke, drink the Coke, and then die. And I always said that's like the best Coke advertisement never made, right? Because but we have
Totally.
that. We have the Coke can, right? So if anybody ever asks, like, where do you have that Coke can in your game? Like, there's a story behind it, But you have to put the potential in at least, so it's there.
That's nice. And how you transport this message to your partners or to the companies?
Absolutely terribly. I mean, our Achilles heel definitely is business development and marketing. So that's why we're going to have a follow-up call, Georg. But no, we are very reactive in that. But what we do is when the question comes up, we do a LinkedIn post, and then if anybody engages with us, we follow that up. But we're much better at creating the moments than actually maximizing the potential of those moments. That's definitely where we need to grow and mature as a company.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common, to be honest. I think that oftentimes it makes sense. A lot of times, game developers are incredible at making games.
And it's also, I think it has to do with the funding right now. Also that you can't just hire 5 people for this. There's a lot of people who have 3, 4, 5 hats on, and then you focus on your gold goals, and the silvers and the bronzes just fall off the table. So it is unfortunately what it is. But you can't. The only thing you can do is you can at least prepare for it, and once upon a time you step in it big time. But you have to create the potential at least, and then hopefully grow into it over time.
Absolutely. Do you see the funding environment changing into 2024, or do you feel like I don't know? I mean, a lot has changed since the last year or so.
I think Georg already mentioned it. I think what we've seen is we've, especially in VR, I think Georg also mentioned NFTs and metaverse in general, is we've had so many near-death experiences for some of these industries where we've been through the hype cycle, we've been through the desperation cycle, and I think now what we're going to see is actually valuable products coming out in these mediums as technology matures, as the developers mature. There's less experimentation in areas where nobody fucking wants it, but actually much more in the areas where there's demand and where the expertise meets that demand. So I think we're going to see a much more organic, hypeless development in these technologies. And if we hopefully get more competition, for example, with Apple in the ecosystem side, I see a very good growth rate, but a much more reasonable and less hyped growth rate.
You can make a great game out of that, Heiko. Finding the blue ocean in a market like the games industry. Right?
So true.
I found it very interesting to, I think I started in mobile gaming around 2008. And everyone was, of course, going onto mobile because of the iPhone. Now everyone is going away, or at least considering going multi-platform or going in a less competitive market. So I found it very interesting what's going on, and in the moment, that's maybe also a recommendation to everyone out there is, in the moment you find something which still looks like a blue ocean, and having whatever 250 applications on the Meta Store is a blue ocean. So there are more games coming out on a daily basis right now on Apple and Android than in total on the Meta Store. So jump on it, be fast, be creative, and be among these early winners, right? This is, of course, something.
Now you obviously gave me an idea, which is terrible, because imagine you go to EA and you say, hey, how about we make a game about EA? Then you take it like you can even say you come with the tagline. You say it's in the game.
Coming in 2025.
Exactly. Definitely, if you've been in the game industry, I mean, if you look at Mythic Quest and stuff like that, there's a game waiting to be made about the game industry, right?
Absolutely.
That space, that universe is so fucking bonkers and crazy that you could make. I mean, I was always enamored with the idea of making a next level Infocom game. These guys had it down with the wits, you know, and the text adventures and the kind of stories they created. You would constantly be laughing out loud, or that 2025.
Yeah, it's true. I do feel like there was a lot of other kinds of media that came out in the last year about the games industry that has done quite well. In fact, like at least in the US, one of the best sellers of last year was this book called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And it's a fiction book about the development of a game studio and like rise to success. It really looks like EA, to be honest, in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And it's the story of like the people who built it and all that stuff, and was like very, very popular, even among general audiences. And then there were definitely a few TV shows and movies as well. So I think it's going to like leach into the broader consciousness, because otherwise it stays kind of like insider baseball for a niche community. You know what I mean?
But that's also the problem. I think if I wrote my book about being an HR head at Crytek, I would get hit with so many defamation lawsuits from the Yearly brothers. It would be unsafe. Like if you knew what happened in that games company behind the scenes, but it would be worth telling.
How are you guys feeling about, I guess, talent in going into 2024? Like you just mentioning the words HR, and talking about funding before, not being, then, you know, if depending on your funding is whether you can hire, a certain number of people. But do you feel like you have enough talent to fit your needs? Like, do you feel like there's enough people out there right now who can help you accomplish your goals, and you could find them effectively on the game development side and on the games marketing, game publishing side?
Well, from the game development side, I would say there is even too many people. There has been a trend for the past decade that with video game schools, and so many people are getting out of those. So there is quite a lot talents out there that are juniors and early developers, and it's tricky to find a big studio because they're only looking for seniors and experienced developers. So there is too many unexperienced people on the market at the moment.
I think that, I mean, I don't know how it is for you, Paul. Like if you look right now around our offices, I'm
Very
fucking
nice.
alone. I'm alone, right? So the thing is that I think coming out of the pandemic, obviously we've all learned to work from home. So I think generally we've all learned that we can hire someone from anywhere and still integrate them well into the team as remote working staff. So the pool has become a lot bigger. I think as it happens, as the industry matures, or as your technology matures, you also weed out more what kind of ratio from seniors to juniors you need, and the seniors become more sought after, and they can also demand higher prices because they can really carry your development, right? So finding the mix and finding the right people, and I'm still an HR guy at heart, so to say, people also fit your culture, who actually love the way you do it, not just what you do, is very important. I mean, I just said this in the solo speech. One of my biggest lessons taken away from Crytek was that during the development of Crysis 2 multiplayer, people were playing Left 4 Dead in lunch break. And we're like, why the fuck are you playing Left 4 Dead? You're making a multiplayer game. And they were like, because it's better than ours. And we're like, why aren't you making it better? You should make a product that is the best that you would want to play. And they're like, it's not worth going into the discussion with the CEO. He wants his game, we just execute. And then we play Left 4 Dead, right? And I was like, no, this will never happen to me. I need a crew that talks back to me, challenges me, and It's
Yep.
it's not easy to find people out there who will take game development maturely and still bring the levity and the fun that why you're in this industry in the first place, you know. So good people with a good technical skill set and the right attitude, still hard to find.
And we also had quite a lot of burnouts that made people leave the industry. So we don't have so many seniors that we should have. I think if I remember correctly, the life expectancy in a game industry is 35 years old. So if you're beyond that, you're like a dinosaur. So yeah,
The divorce rate's also high.
yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I hear you. This is it's a tough environment to be in, and I mean, back at the time, you know, you had crunch, and then I think we added death march to it, which we had quite frequently. So I was always the one, and this is, I think, one of the learnings for me as running my own company. It's very easy to blame founders for the shit that they do when they're running a company until you run your own company, and you find
Right.
yourself face to face with some impossible Kobayashi Maru scenarios that you never thought you would encounter. And one of the things that I was always on that Blizzard side of, we release when it's ready. I don't give a shit about Q4 and the Christmas tree. And then now we're in the same situation, right? I mean, the 75th anniversary of the airlift only comes around once, so our release window is exactly there. They're not going to move the airlift for us, you know? So I'm like, guys, take as much time as you want. Quality comes first. But it's March 1st, or we're toast. You know, so.
And you have to consider that before you have Baldur's Gate 3, and later you have GTA 6. So you have so many obligations.
Yeah.
I would always recommend going after Christmas, Heiko. 5th season is, especially now, where, you know, there will be
So competitive.
Yes, but there will be now many Quest 3s under the Christmas tree, many new players, and looking for the first setup of their game set, more or less. So this is the time to go out.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I always found it funny when we had testimonials of the developers who fucking hated their lives, and at that point they also hated the game, and then they had to, you know, talk to every game journalist out there about how awesome the game was going to be. And it was kind of like, you know, you wanted to see the behind the scenes when the guys go like, oh, if you ask me one more time about this, I'm just going to throw up. You know, but I'm with you. It is much better when so your staff can talk about the game in a way that they love what they did, and it came out in a time and it didn't cost them their marriage, right? But
yeah, but you can now develop that market. That's really interesting, and cards will be played out completely new and fresh, and how the distribution will go, and how you get all these new players. So this is a very exciting time in the VR space, I guess.
You have to die one death, right? Either come into a mature market and then you have to fight against whoever's already there and who's the gorilla in the market, or you have to scream into the dark and hope somebody hears it, and you have to build the market. Both have their challenges, both have their drawbacks. I'm much more comfortable being in the market that's not there yet and trying to develop something than trying to be up against mature players and stuff like that. So I've chosen my death carefully, and I burn gladly in this fire.
No, that makes sense. And Georg, do you if you were talking to a game developer who was thinking about bringing a game to market, would you recommend that they release early at the date that they initially set, or that they wait for more perfection? I know, at least on my end, I work in a software startup, so we ship fast, we ship early, and we get products into the hands of customers and like build features based on their feedback. But everyone has a different approach.
So did CD Projekt Red with Cyberpunk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It depends really on the platform and the status of the game. What I can say is that, you know, in mobile gaming, and I was before almost a decade in mobile gaming publishing, we were always looking for the next country to do a soft launch and get some numbers in, of course. And what I can highly recommend is really go into for example, we are working with influencers in Philippines, Indonesia, where you could not only get for your money some insights about retention rates and monetization KPIs, but also getting some feedback from an influencer and their users and their viewers, and most likely for a better price. So I still believe, of course, it's super important to have your numbers right, to have your KPIs right when you launch. But of course, the times have changed. When I was, for example, involved in the launch of Royal Revolt 2, a game from Phoenix Games, and by that time, when you had good contacts to the platforms like Apple and Google, you could anticipate that there will be some major featurings coming up. And of course, you should have your numbers right when you have that opportunity. These days, where everything is run with algorithms and you only get a few thousand users at launch date, I would say go out as early as possible. Shouldn't be a crap game, and you should have your reviews from users you need to consider this. But there are some development companies working now on titles for 2026, 27, and don't have an idea if there's a market or if there's even an interest. It's always a tough decision to make. I
think the reality that'll hit people like Paul and me, obviously, any kind of developer out there, is the question is also, do you even have the possibility in terms of funding, right? I mean, I remember that Gabe Newell statement where he says, your audience will always forgive you for being late. They will never forgive you when it sucks. But they also can't forgive you if you run out of money and you go extinct, right? So I think the learning for me there was they were genius with Steam, right? It was the same thing for Crytek at the time. They had the CryEngine. So there was a general cash flow that they had upon which they built flexibility in terms of their release. If you're in the cycle of game release and boom or bust, you're always bound by that one game, and that's your death or your life, right? So if you can build something that is the foundation of the game that gives you a general cash flow, then you can live that mantra of saying, for Christmas, we come out in March or whatever, but we get it right. But for that, you need to put some strategy in place that you can afford that strategy.
Totally. It's very, very tough to predict, and I feel like because games have incredibly long life cycles, like funding the game, a first game, is incredibly difficult. For so many years, but it's also I don't know. Are you guys looking into ways to decrease that life cycle? I know that there are a lot of these generative AI companies that are coming out that are mentioning shortening the life cycle on the game development side in order to help with manage that cash a little bit better. How do you think about that, and what impact would that have on your business?
AI will have a huge impact on the industry, of course, especially when you have a bigger game with all these art assets. If you can multiply that and duplicate all of that and come up with new settings and new levels very easily, where we are not there yet, I would say, right? But this is where many people hope to go. Then of course it's a game changer, right?
This plays exactly into what I just said before, Elyssa. For us, that's the number one thing, that actually to build a generative AI game engine behind these games that we're making is going to be the foundation for us to go forward, right? So I think Tesla has the whole autopilot and the automation behind it and the supercharger infrastructure. That's kind of like the system that you need to build. The car almost becomes secondary to your charging infrastructure, and that's kind of like we're saying the game will become almost secondary to what to do with the game on the platform. But yeah, it is very early on. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of bullshit about this technology.
Yep.
But it is feasible. It is coming and it is there. And if you do it in a realistic way, you can build a foundation now that you'll be first when it takes off. But there's the pragmatic stuff. You just having AI check your code, cutting down on development time and QA and stuff like that, apart from art assets, there's a lot of optimization that you can do with it, but also in terms of strategy going forward, generating content and generating entire games in the future. It will be in the cards. We're not there yet, but you need to create the back end for it now so that you're in pole position when it can get good.
Totally. Paul, are you using any AI tools at all in your current workflow?
Yeah, actually I am. I have had to write a story for the game, and having some help to make a strong storyline and good plots. Yeah, it was quite helpful to have some help on that. And if I had to use AI for next game, I'd like to explore having the possibility to have some voices. I know we usually we think about art and concept, etc., but having voices generated is quite important because it's usually very expensive, and it opens a lot of possibilities. So it's my main interest personally.
And actually for us also what comes into play is biometrics, especially with VR, like measuring stress levels of players or giving feedback on share of voice, how much one player talks over the other and stuff like that. That there's a lot of analysis, especially in the corporate space, that they can take away for learning and development that you can automate. But I was just thinking about, Paul, what you had. I mean, we've done so much brainstorming with ChatGPT on the storylines for the games, and you still have to be so fucking careful. Like I remember I asked at one point about a specific plane, the plane that led the invasion of Normandy in D-Day. It was the same planes that later were in Berlin to deliver the food. And I asked, it was a specific plane. I forget what the name was. It was here you are, brother, or something. It's a specific plane. I asked, was that plane also on the Berlin airlift? And ChatGPT goes, yes, it was. So I'm like, can you give me the sources? Oh, I'm sorry. That's actually, I just meant the type of plane, not that particular plane. And the second question was, has one of those cargo planes ever done a looping? Yes, cargo planes have done loopings regularly. Okay, can you give me a source? Well, theoretically, a plane like that could do a loop, but actually, we don't have any source. So I'm always very wary that still, you can use it for creative inspiration, but you have to be still very careful with the tech.
Yeah, it's quite an issue at the moment, but it will get it sorted out very soon. There is already some updates on ChatGPT and all the AI, so they understand that they don't have to invent everything and they have to be precautious. So this won't be an issue for a long time.
Yeah, I was also
in preparation for our chat here, I was asking ChatGPT, what's the average share gaming companies spend on influencer marketing these days? And ChatGPT mentioned it's 30% of the overall revenue. Gaming companies spend 30% of their overall revenue into influencer marketing, which would be, of course, fantastic for us.
Yeah,
it's not the truth, because what is the average margin you have with the gaming companies these days? So all these companies would be broke. So unfortunately, that's not the case. So can only second what Heiko said. You have to be very careful.
And maybe that is even maybe Georg, it just wants to tell you what you want to hear. Maybe.
Yeah. Exactly. It knows its customer.
By the way, the plane was called "That's All, Brother," because the first plane to Normandy was the one delivering the message to Hitler, and it was "That's all, brother." Sorry, I just had to get that in.
No. Actually, I think it was 2 days ago or 3 days ago, I saw in the news that OpenAI signed a deal with Axel Springer about being able to use all of their news sources and being able to cite those sources in their answers. So I think right now there's a lot of gatekeeping, of course, among like news organizations, the holders of the facts, in order to provide that information to these large language models. But I think slowly, kind of the way that 5-7 years ago, TikTok and all the big music rights holders were making deals that are, like 9-figure deals in order to, have the right rights regimes for those platforms. I think the same thing will happen with the information that's circulating and giving us these fake data points now, but coming soon will be from all the news organizations that you expect them to be from.
I tell you, I'm looking forward to in 5 or 10 years when we finally read the book about what happened that weekend with Sam Altman.
Yeah.
What really went down. I bet you there's a lot more to that story than what we know now.
Only time will tell. But I think right now, like at least to what you guys are describing, I mean, I think that ChatGPT and other, I guess, like large language models like that are really excellent brainstorming partners. It's really good for divergent thinking to kind of augment and like complement the boundaries of like your own perspective, but potentially not to give you exact facts about the name of the plane or the exact market share. Some of that we need to put some elbow grease behind it and get those answers ourselves.
Good to know that we're not completely superfluous just yet.
And not yet. But what advice would you give to other new game studios and developers entering the industry in 2024?
Have a marketing strategy in place. That's the most important part.
I would say create mechanics that can sell.
Yeah. By the way, guys, I'm not sure if we were even live with our panel here.
No, it's recorded. I think they're doing it later. My team just told me, "You're not live, dude." No, but I think I would put together what both of you are saying is the most crucial part is you can't just have a good game. You can't just have good marketing. You need a good business plan. You need to know what you're selling to whom and how. Otherwise, you will be underdeveloped in one area that can kill you. But it's an exciting time, especially talking about serious games for us. It's an absolutely exciting time to enter the space. It's wide open. There's a lot of room for experimentation in a good way, and it's exciting to be there.
Totally.
Absolutely. Will be the year of VR among the year of Web3, hopefully. So let's see.
We're betting the farm on it, Georg. So I hope so too.
All right.
Very cool, guys. Well, I guess we can also end the panel then whenever we want. But it's really been an interesting conversation and a pleasure to chat with you guys.
Yeah,
thank you. Good luck with your launch, Paul, and Georg will talk.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you for moderating, Elyssa.
Yes,
Take
anytime.
Bye-bye, guys. Merry Christmas.
Bye, guys. Happy holidays.
Christmas. Bye-bye.